again, when I woke up this morning, I thought, what else in terms of what we've done so far in this track would be useful as we're focusing on ourselves. And as I said, in the fall, we're going to be focusing much more on relationship and communication with others. And I realized there's been one other thing that I have found really crucial in adapting to change that we haven't talked about. And it's what it is our spiritual gifts, which are different than thinking talents. So what I'd like to do is read you a little bit about spiritual gifts, and then we'll do a practice, okay? This is from me, from this book I wrote on trusting yourself. So this is a quote from Dina Metzger. To deny that we are gifted is perhaps to indulge in false humility, which allows us to shirk our responsibility to the gift. Gifts must be developed and passed on. One day at a workshop, I met Troy. Being with Troy was like being immersed in a vast warm pond of glowing light. Originally from Jamaica, he now lives in New York City and works as a real estate agent. But I'm really a supporter of souls, he quietly explained to me. People getting divorced, single mothers looking for a safe home for their kids. I listen and I do what I can to help. As he spoke, he radiated calmness. I knew that if I were in trouble, I would want to be around him. I asked Troy where he learned to be so peaceful. He said he didn't know that he had been that way since he could remember, that it had gotten him into trouble with boys who didn't consider him manly enough, and that it led to a separation with his wife because she was upset that she could never provoke him. She mistook his tranquility for lack of caring. But I figured it was better to stay peaceful, even if others didn't appreciate it, he said sadly. Every time I was near Troy, I felt serene. The last day I said to him, you have a very strong spiritual gift. I would call it equanimity. Thank you, he said, beaming. It feels good to have it acknowledged and appreciated. Like Troy, each and every one of us has precious gifts of the soul. We may take them for granted. We may consider them weakness or have been criticized or ridiculed for them by unaware others. But we each have them, and they are different from thinking talents. They are spiritual attributes that we were either graced with at birth or grew very strong when we were young through the challenges of our lives. They are qualities of the heart, such as graciousness, steadfastness, devotion, humility, purity, integrity, idealism, loyalty. Merely acknowledging our gifts can be a courageous act. It goes against all of our training that we have about not being swell-headed or full of ourselves. But nowhere in our lives is it more crucial than we go against this conditioning. It is our birthright to celebrate these soulful attributes. They are the vehicles by which we bring joy to others and consequently to ourselves. They are our gifts that we have to offer to the rest of the world. We are usually challenged in our soul gifts. That's how we grow them, by refusing, like Troy, to give them up despite outward pressure or inward doubt. So we're going to do a practice of thinking about that. I'll give you an example, which I think I always used to say that my gift was my understanding, and it was also my wound, because I could understand anybody, and therefore I never, so including people who were not being very nice to me, right? So as a consequence, I found it hard to get angry at them. And so I always thought that was a problem. And it took me a long time to realize my ability to understand is my gift, right? And I grew it out of the challenges of my life. My mother was very chaotic emotionally and volatile. And so understanding her was my protection mechanism, right? Now is the thing that I have to offer to the world. There's a famous spiritual teacher named Almas. I can't remember his first name now, but his last name is Aamas, Almas. And he says that each of us in the core have this jewel, which I'm talking about, this jewel. And often it's covered in mud. And this process is uncovering that, so your jewel shines. But I always feel like the jewel, it isn't uncovered, it's like it's created from the mud, right? It's created from those things that have happened to us, that have challenged us, that have been difficult. And we may not even know how we got them, but we are just this way, right? So I told Finn I was going to talk about them. So Finn has had persistence since they were an infant. You know how kids, when they're toddlers, they flip from thing to thing, they play with something for a second and they put it down. And I remember going to this play center and Finn went up to the kitchen or something, the play kitchen, and they were there forever doing this stuff. And, you know, dozens of kids came and went, but they were doing their thing. And this ability to be persistent, this quality of the heart. And I also think about another time that, you know, from a tiny child, Finn has always been very sensitive to other people and their needs. My friend who had sprained her ankle was visiting me, and maybe 2 or 3 again, Finn noticed that the ankle was, and ran and found a stool so that Anne could put her foot on a stool. And Anne, who was a child psychologist, said, that's really young for being that aware of another person and their needs, right? So that is an example. We all have these things. If you were lucky, people notice them in you. And if you weren't, it's your job to notice it in yourself now. One of my other teachers said that we need to name things so we can claim them and we can aim them. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to name them so we can claim them. And I'm going to share the screen just so if we can see the process. Okay. Okay. So one way to do this is to think about things other people have criticized, ridiculed, or shamed you for. Oh, you're too sensitive. Somebody, probably Finn, has anyone ever said that to you? You're too sensitive?
Probably.
Yeah. So think about things that you've blamed or shamed yourself for, or thought was wrong with you. Could that be a gift in disguise? And what would that maybe be? Or have you been lucky enough to have your gifts acknowledged? And what have other people said about the qualities of the heart? Okay. And then how might you name, claim, and aim these as part of what you have to give to the world? All right. Question. Everyone understands the process? You're just going to think about this either from the negative, the light shining through the negative, or from that which you know about yourself.